Disco Elysium basically tricked people into reading one of the best written novels ever by disguising it as a video game. It's filled with sentiments that delve deep into the human psyche, politics, and philosophy, while being written with a poetic and vivid voice. But I made some interesting observations about its writing aspects due to the work being constructed as a sort of gamified novel. There are these writing aspects that are categorized for the sake of RPG mechanics, but they're also categorized in a way that I feel like can make good studying material on how writing works. When writing, you are pulling from the abyss of the imagination, and a good way to do that is to consider all sorts of perspectives. Then to make this even more engaging, you need to write it in a unique voice that is evocative and flows well. Multiple and diverse perspectives is something Disco Elysium realizes through the skill system. It's a typical RPG thing to have a skill system using points into to create a unique character to each playthrough who has their own strengths and weaknesses. But with Disco Elysium in particular, these skills act as perspectives. They are thoughts that tap into different perspectives that let the character and reader view a situation from all sorts of different angles and different flavors. When you have all these angles, you are bound to have these thoughts contradict each other, giving rise to conflict that is pretty much happening all the time. It's like going down a checklist of all the characters' internal conflicts, and an engaging aspect of fiction is seeing which one of these thoughts will win. One of the writers, Helen Hinpier, actually talks about the writing software they use promoting more shorter, snappy writing. This allows them to do long inner monologues, but hidden as dialogue due to the way the skills work. She felt that the fluid consciousness of the writing was pretty intuitive because of the skills, since everyone has these sort of voices in their head. One important element of character's reaction. When Harry comes along something, there is an intent to have him react and build the character. Helen Hinpier says that in games, when you come along a diary or something and a character doesn't react, it's kind of lame, you know? I kind of want my character in Skyrim to react to the lizard people smut. Passive skill checks make it easy for the character to react to a diary or whatever in a way that best implements the character that has been built. How will someone with high empathy react to this and this, or someone with low or high volition? Even beyond just the main character, other characters have skills that they are partial to and impartial to. Even Kim messes up some skill checks like perception when he suits down the body. I mean, if you've played Disco Elysium, you are already familiar with all the goofy little guys in Harry's head, but I want to take a look at some of my favorite skills and see why their insight is important. I'm not going to go through all of them because that's a lot. Conceptualization is the ability to understand creativity, see art in the world, to make fresh associations, the ability to find deeper meaning in things, not taking things at face value. Like this conceptualization check is able to make a simile to a silver jumpsuit and scale armor, finding beauty in it while also finding the association in the loose sparkles created from wear and tear. It can also find association with a coat to a bag of goodies. The temptation to smoke a lot to a cat rubbing against its owner's calves. Conceptualization might be the most important skill for a writer to have. You can see it all over the writing in the game, not even in the conceptualization checks, like making the connection between a human brain and a reptilian complex. Empathy may be one of the most important perspectives in my opinion. Empathy helps us create connections and understanding with other characters. It breaks into the souls of other characters and forces you to feel what's inside. You can feel out the motivation behind a character's words and actions, creating bigger meaning from small social cues. Empathy is big for writing. A lot of Disco Elysium was rewrote over and over just to flesh out its characters in a way that makes them feel true and complex. Like noticing something as simple as Kim's notebook being where he has conversations with himself. They wanted characters to say what they'd actually say and feel what they'd actually feel, making them real hearts that can get across to the reader/player. Empathy is able to evoke a real feeling of pathos that isn't ham-fisted, you know.
He must feel vulnerable without his glasses. Is this why he's letting you take the lead?
Electrochemistry is a funny one. It's your physical propensity to light up your neurons in a rave, the animal inside you wishing to be unleashed and indulge. I like to view it as Harry's devil on his shoulder, a symptom of his old self-destructive tendencies whispering in his ear to make him relapse. When electrochemistry chips in, his way of talking about cigarettes or alcohol is delicious. I really like the idea of it. A voice that acts as a primal instinct to fall back on easier habits that are ultimately bad for you in the long run. Like in another framing, if Harry was a character who had anger issues instead, this could be like an anger skill, a voice in your head that illustrates an evocative argument for why you should unleash your wrath. This creates a really interesting internal conflict for a stream of consciousness type prose. Halfway is kind of similar idea. It's very adjacent, but it's through the lens of primal fight or flight response. It's a bit more like your emotions trying to take control rather than your vices.
Kill him. Kill him now.
Esprit de Corps is interesting. It's Harry's ability to understand cop culture. The most interesting part of it is that it is a perspective that lets you zoom out now and then. You can see in the events of Harry's fellow police corps that he is nowhere near with this skill. I really like the idea of this, having a deep understanding of a culture that you are practically a part of its long-reaching neurostem and you can tap into it. If you really wanted to apply this, you can think about what soap culture or whatever a character is part of. Like I read Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata recently, and in it the protagonist is someone who has worked at a convenience store for half their life. So they feel connected to the convenience store to the point they can imagine what is happening there when she isn't there. When something isn't right, she can feel it telling her what it needs. Shivers is another zoom out perspective. It's a perspective that makes you take a wide look at the setting to feel the texture of the world around you while digging into its history and people. It helps construct an image and atmosphere of the world the characters are placed in. I really like the way it is constructed. A stream of history, people, and atmosphere flows into you from the touch of a breeze or rivulets of rain. These zoom-out perspectives really help the audience connect and immerse themselves in a setting.
A traffic jam. Rain thrumming on the roofs of motor vehicles. Inside, drivers watch water streaming down their windshields. The statue of a king shudders. He too is cold. The canal bridge has been raised.
Encyclopedia is a useful perspective. It helps fill in the details of the world an audience should know, like little facts that a character reveals because people just like to go, ooh, I know. It also adds a ton of flavor because there are a ton of things Harry knows that are frivolous. This adds flavor and character. Like, what would a character know useless facts about? Is this a movie trivia nerd or a sports nerd? What does this suggest about them? Everyone has these kind of esoteric encyclopedias in their brain, and I always find that interesting. Like, even though I don't watch basketball as frequently anymore, and my hobbies tend to skew more towards experiencing and creating art nowadays, I still don't know who won the 1989 NBA championship. Very recently I watched the movie They Cloned Tyrone, and in it is a kid that applies everything through the lens of SpongeBob. Like, oh, this character's a wet blanket, so he's Squidward. Inland Empire is one of, if not my favorite perspective. It's intuition and imagination, hunches and gut feelings, dreams and waking life. This is really where creativity can shine. It's what causes Harry to notice the horrid design of a necktie and imagine it as this dreadful creature.
Let's bail! Time to push the eject button!
Inland Empire is named after the movie by David Lynch, who, if you don't know him, is known for his uniqueness as a storyteller because of how much he leans into imaginative ideas and creative intuition. No matter how out there and random it might seem at first glance, if you can really channel this perspective when writing, you will most likely have an irreplaceable story which is endlessly valuable. How can you manifest a character's chaotic whims? By him imagining his necktie telling him to do those whims. There's this one scene in one of my favorite anime called Hyouka where the main character is examining the demeanor of his overly curious friend. and imagines her having a tail like a dog. Like, I love stuff like this. My boys inland hammer status high. It is also the perspective that satiates your childlike wonder, this perspective that is brought wanderlust and whimsy by cryptozoology. Imagination is happiness. Harry gets so excited when he thinks he hears the Koldu Mamamakwa. It's a perspective that has your best interests in mind, no matter how loony you become.
No, I don't hear the Koldu Mamadakwa, and neither do you.
Of course he doesn't. He's deaf.
Volition is like anti-electrochemistry, the angel on your shoulder, the thing trying to keep you together and be a good person to yourself and others, mental health and moral compass. If electrochemistry is falling back on your easy, unhealthy desires, volition is like the hard, nagging conscience trying to block that. It's the thing pushing you to get out of bed in the morning. It can be good to utilize this kind of perspective to create conflict with the other negative parts of a character. The voice fighting against pessimism, or your more, unruly character traits. One other perspective I really like is suggestion, which is planting ideas in people's minds. If people think they want what you want, you've already won. Suggestion can be an integral strategy for characters at conflict and dialogue, a maneuver to indirectly guide them to where you want to go. Like Gart taking pity on Harry by him making a show of how badly broke he is. Logic is important to the psychology of a character. How are they able to deduce, analyze, piece together clues, and detect inconsistencies? How good are they at puzzle solving? It's like a character making an observation from something indirect and their ability to come to a sound conclusion. Is a character more of a Sherlock or more of a Watson? Rhetoric is the ability to argue and convince, or deconstruct the arguments of others. The ability to persuade others. You can detect fallacies through this. You can see what is unsaid from what is being said, what story someone is trying to weave through words, and you can cut through the heart of the matter to get them to open up. Drama is the perspective of playing someone else, concocting lies and detecting lies. Where do lies begin and end with characters? Drama can get Harry to lie for someone's benefit, but it can also crawl on your shoulder and make you lie for no one's benefit. I also want to bring up the thought cabinet. It helps you look at what kind of person would be partial to certain perspectives. Like if you decide to be an art cop, you will lose points in perception because you can't even look at this shit, man. Or hand-eye coordination will lose points because you are so angry at how shit it all is. Or if you internalize the cop of the apocalypse, you lose rhetoric due to being a rambling madman while increasing inland empire and shivers. The way written conflict is gamified can also lend a bit of insight on how to write conflict. Think of conversations like boss fights. It's kind of like what viewpoint, what certain piece of information that you coaxed out of them or noticed with a certain skill will make this certain person give way. Sometimes it's rhetoric, sometimes it's a clue gotten from a composure check, sometimes it's just empathy. How do you win at convincing an old man to relinquish his sandwich? How do you lose? Then there are also the characters and their first impressions. They might give off one vibe, but pretty much always they have layers you can unravel where you can get the truth of them. These can help you win conversations. For example, say you want an old man sandwich. You need it, actually. How do you do this in the game? This old man is playing a ball game and you notice he's cheating with a high enough composure skill. Maybe you can point it out but not go all the way with it to give you some leverage.
What do you mean, officer?
Then you can use some rhetoric to imply that you will point out his cheating if he doesn't relinquish his sandwich. Or you can use some rhetoric, encyclopedic knowledge of recipes, even a little bit of interfacing by describing how he can prove the structure of the sandwich, and then convince him that if he gives you this sandwich, you will use it as a base to create the greatest sandwich of all time. But I think it's also important to look at how you might fail to get him to relinquish the sandwich, because that can be even more entertaining. Like, your rhetoric might not work on a guy you had just forcibly drafted into a vigilante group against his will, or if you try to politicize a sandwich as a sandwich that keeps the proletariat docile and conceptualize a new sandwich with the heart of the working class. You just weird him out, because if you navigate his interactions with Rene, you can see that he is adverse to politics, as he even refrained from fighting on any side of the Insulidian Civil War. This is what I mean by little decisions and interactions building up relationships between characters. The sandwich is a small scale, more digestible example of this. Information you can get from one other person can be vital when cross-examining another person. Some people are just covered in layers of pretense, like Kuno, for example, is a labyrinthian black box to crack. If you have a high drama stat, you can see just how often he lies. In medium logic to notice he uses third person to distance himself from the situation. If you follow any conversation with Kuno, you can see that he actually does hold a bit of respect for the police in a twisted, violent sort of way, but Kuno S always cuts off any momentum you get with him. A high empathy check is needed in order to peer inside this dude's mind. But probably the most important aspect of making an engaging written story is the writing, how it is written. I'm talking about prose, baby. This is actually where I think Disco Elysium excels the most. This is where good stories thrive, in their unique voices. I'm confident in my personal belief that good prose should have personality, and that's exactly what Disco Elysium has. Not excessively ornate, but tactile, imaginative, allegorical, and often punchy and poetic. It feels full of depth and poetry, but still pretty accessible for, gamers. You can use short sentences like this to elaborate off of each other to create texture. It turns nouns like limb and head into adjectives to give a certain flow. Uses walk the desert as a poetic, euphemistic way to describe Harry's life. It uses a lot of these, sometimes straightforward similes, sometimes more intuitive metaphors that stir the imagination, like giving items personification to detail their visuals. This could have said, there are bottles of alcohol on the shelf, they look inviting. But instead, it describes it in a way that makes you feel it, puts you in the feelings of the character. It shows the texture of the world by describing how light affects the environment, but it is also intertwined with Harry's perspective. The wink shows that they are alluring to Harry. It expands upon these two lines, giving a clarity to it through it's like looking into a kind of heaven before describing how it physically affects Harry. Once again, this next skill gives a tactile perception to the world, clearly visualizing the glasses of alcohol, describing the alcohol within as red, but using ruby to give it a sparkling, attractive quality. Also, electrochemistry throws in a all in vain at the end of the sentence to showcase the dramaticism of this moment. But I also want to point out the flow in each of these blurbs. It feels satisfying, right? There's a sort of rhythm here. The first two sentences of the perception check share the same syllable amount of 9. They also share a structure of the bottles / the smokes, then an intransitive verb placed between the subject and where they are placed. Then the third and fourth sentences break this pattern to circumvent monotony while still flowing downstream of those two initial observations. Then the electrochemistry check has a different flow to it. The first sentence is soft punches connected with tiny pauses in between. Then it proposes a metaphor before rhythmically clarifying the metaphor 3 times. Not only does this writing have a fun flow to it, but it's all colored by Harry's perspective as well. It's deeply embedded in Harry's and his small, exaggerated personalities in his head's voice. I really love metaphors that create strong, maybe abstract visuals. It really helps evoke emotions indirectly and create atmosphere. The sensation of being drunk evoked through the images of flames licking at the edges of your vision, or coming to a logical conclusion that makes the world be lit with lightning. Right here is a great example of being descriptive in a place where it matters. Like, readers can feel emotions more if they are described rather than said. Like, instead of, wow, she's sad, describe sadness in a way that a reader can think, oh, yeah, I know what that feels like. This news feels like a spike. The pain makes the blood freeze in her veins. She looks at the last remnants of his existence left behind. This is why writing with empathy is important, to draw out the shared pain of a little gesture. So I want to clarify that this all isn't a formula or anything. This is just a perspective to maybe help people get a different view on writing. Whenever people look at writing advice, they tend to take it as a hard science instead of just a suggestion. These are maybe methods that can help you improve your self-expression, because that's the most important thing of writing. The other big thing that makes Disco Elysium work is that it's a personal, creative collaboration. A lot of the writers are injected into the story in Harry. Helen Hinpia explains that a lot of the side stuff in the game was actually born out of their procrastination. When putting off writing their part of the story, they might hyperfixate on a thing and find some way to write it into the story. And Robert Kurvitz goes, yeah, keep that in. It makes the world and Harry feel more real, colored, and kind of unpredictable. I think this really helps the story feel creative. I take this as an example to not be afraid of injecting whatever you are in that moment into a story that you are writing right then. This has been one of the most incredibly beautiful things about making Disco, this naivete. If we had been more professional, I think a lot of fun stuff would not have happened. With this professionalism, there's a level of cynicism. Back then, we were very naive. Any stupid idea, go for it, explore it. This game is personal to the writers. It is a reflection of the Estonia they grew up in, and also a way to sort of understand their life. The writers are clearly left in their political compass, but you can see empathy, understanding, and shit dished out for every school of thought. It's why Measurehead is usually a huge sack of shit, but can also give you one of the most profound speeches in the game. That's why, beyond it all, Disco Elysium is a story about people and their problems, like dealing with alcoholism and loss. It's human. It's writing.
The past is made of static images, distorted memories, demented nostalgia. This, the present, with all its possibilities, innumerable hits and misses, is far superior. It is a living organism.